busy with stuff with seminary, and then the second week I decided to take spring break and go to much warmer temperatures in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was all right. It got cold there, so don't worry, I suffered a little bit too. But we're back now, and we're in session 4 of Lifeway's Explore the Bible Sunday School books. And if you haven't watched these before, I just kind of tell you what I kind of walked away with these lessons from and give you some insight in the middle of the week to just kind of help you get through stuff during the week. And so session 4 in the youth book, it's titled Comfort in Trials, and the main theme or the central truth is encouragement from fellow believers can renew weary hearts. And then the adult book, it's titled Encouraged, and it's got a very similar central truth. It says, seeing changed lives encourages distressed hearts. Now, we've talked about the impact that how you react to trials can have on other people, whether it's people of faith that are already believers, or whether it's non-believers, and how it can bring them around to seeing God's truth and God's love. And so we know there's a huge impact on how people react during these trials and tribulations. And so here in Thessalonians, just kind of to catch you up if you haven't been reading along, Paul is writing this letter to the church in Thessalonica. He administered to them and started that church, and then he got, ran out kind of before he was finished getting them set up and started. And so they were a very young church, and Paul was worried sick about them. And so once Paul finally settled down, he sent Timothy back to Thessalonica to check on them. Timothy came back with an awesome report for Paul, and Paul was just ecstatic and encouraged about what he had heard from Timothy. He was amazed at how strong the church had grown and how they were able to spread the gospel throughout the area. And so Paul's now writing this letter back to them, just expressing his encouragement and his love for them. And so we're in 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, verses 4 through 13 this week. And one thing that I kind of got out of this was, Paul is very distressed about this. We don't know what all is going on in Paul's life right now to create so much tribulation and trial and worry. But he is just overwhelmed with encouragement when he receives this good news. And so the thing I walked away with is that, one of the things, is that our leaders need encouragement. Our pastors, our teachers, our Sunday school teachers, our worship leaders, our just leaders in general, our deacons, and then people that are out there just spreading the word, missionaries. They need encouragement. They get down. They get distressed. They sometimes feel like what they're doing is for nothing. They can get discouraged about how well it's going or not going. And so Paul is getting encouragement here as a leader from his fellow believers within Thessalonica. And so of course, Paul's no stranger to persecution and trials and tribulations. And that's kind of another thing that I got out of this that I think would be helpful to all of us, is that we all go through these, right? And it's not just a one and done deal. The tense that Paul used in this book for when he was talking about the trials and tribulations is an ongoing verb tense. And so our trials and tribulations aren't just whoosh, you're tested and you're done, you're smooth sailing from here on out. It's ongoing. And I think we all have experienced that, maybe even right now, just one thing after another, boom, boom, boom. It's like unrelentless. And we have to expect that. It's life, and it's what God told us would happen. And God uses all of those things to not only test our faith, but to strengthen it. We learn in James, that He'll use all of that stuff to strengthen us, to test us, and it's all for our good. It's to mature us as Christians. And so I think that's something we need to hold on to and remember as Christians and as leaders within the Christian church. We're going to go through stuff like this, but there's always encouragement that can be gained from fellow believers. And so Paul gives us a great example of that here. And then another thing that he shows us is just his overwhelming love for the gospel and for this church. I mean, Paul talks a lot about love throughout all of his letters. We read it in Philippians. We read it in Ephesians. In 1 Corinthians, he talks faith, love, and hope. And the greatest is? Yeah. Man, Paul talks a lot about love, and his overwhelming love here for the church is just abundant in his letter to them. Not only because they're spreading the gospel, but because they're encouraging him as a leader, and they're encouraging other believers to be strong in their faith, just like they are, and just like Christ is. Because Christ was no stranger to suffering either. And so when you feel like you're going through something, I just want to challenge you to turn to other believers. We've all been through something that you're probably going through. And we should turn to each other for encouragement. Just like Paul's turning to Thessalonica here, the church in there. He's turning to them for encouragement. And we should build our strength and our love off of each other. Because Paul's ministry was all about love. And that was his thought, was that was the main virtue of all Christianity. And that all other aspects and traits are going to flow from that love that we have for each other. And not just for, fellow believers, right? He tells us in Romans, pray for those that are persecuting us, and pray for enemies, and just to love everybody. And so if you're going through something this week, I just want to challenge you to reach out to somebody. If you need to comment, email me, message me, Facebook me, whatever, reach out to me, reach out to Will, reach out to anybody that you might feel comfortable with in the church, because that's what we're here for. We're here for one another. And just know that you're not alone. We've all suffered, and we've all been at low points in our life, and we've all grown stronger from it. God uses that to grow us. And so just remember that Paul suffered. Lots of people suffered. Jesus himself suffered on that cross for you. And that's the ultimate sign and show of love, is when he suffered and died on that cross for us. And so remember that. Turn to each other, turn to God, and those tribulations and those trials, that relentless stuff that's going on in your life trying to bog you down, it won't seem so hard. And we'll get through it together. So, if you're feeling down, come to church this Sunday. We've got fellowship time, which was awesome this last week. We just sat around a table and talked for the whole time. Hardly any of us ate. We just sat around and talked about stuff going on in our lives, good, bad. So come and fellowship. We got Sunday school where we're learning this awesome lesson about Paul and the Thessalonian church. And then come to church and sing songs of worship. Be around those that are also suffering and going through things, and get encouraged. So I hope this is a little bit encouraging to you this week,